Okay, thanks. Hi, Paul. Thank you for that. I've been struggling with my computer today to get on, so I do apologise there. Just let me get my headset sorted. Hang on a minute. It's just caught in my hair a bit there. Right, okay. Hello, everybody. I'm very, very surprised that we've got so many people on because I did think that with this beautiful weather that everybody would have had a holiday, an emergency holiday booked and tried to get the day off. So thank you very, very much for joining me on this wonderful hot day. Yeah, I know you've all met me before. My name's Amanda Chadwick, and I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't get a chance to respond because I was having a bit of a technical issue to get on here today, but now I'm on. And I hope you're all well. I can see now that everybody is logging on still as I speak. But today I'm talking about embracing flexibility and adapting to the future. So let's have a little look at that and let's talk about that and have that conversation. A reminder that everything I speak about is generic. Really, I think here today, the detail contained within this webinar is based on Northern Ireland and GB legislation. If you're in Ireland, if you're in Guernsey, if you're in Jersey, Guernsey, I mean Jersey and Guernsey or the Isle of Man, then just give us a call because we'll give you advice relevant to your jurisdiction. I am based in North Wales, as you know, and for once we don't have rain. And the other thing is, I think though flexible working, when I talk about the law, that's the law, but actually it's your business. You can do what you want, can't you? So if you're listening to me internationally, you know, this law I'm speaking about today doesn't apply to you, but it's quite generic. You can apply that within your company. That's fine. Same with anything, isn't it? You can do what you want as long as it's reasonable, as long as it complies with the code of practices and the statutory laws as well. But even if it's not in, you can do what you want. Don't forget the numbers 0808 145 3386. And that's if you're a client of ours, we'd rather you take our advice. That's where you get that legal promise with us. We don't want you not to take our advice. If you want us to be straight, if you want to just go, look, what do I have to do to deal with this person? Be straight. And Association of Partnership members 0844 561 8133. You may have a different service. If you would like to refer anybody to join Corona, we have got a superb scheme at the moment. I think they're up in it as well. I think it's £500 for you. And that's for you on a loaded card for you to spend on what you want. So today, what will we cover? How the law surrounding flexible working has changed. I'm going to talk about what this means in practice for business owners handling and refusing flexible working requests, different flexible working patterns and considerations also for those lone workers as well. So that's what I'm going to cover today. Let's look at what does flexible working mean. And it really is just an arrangement, isn't it? Where somebody is asking you to change their contractual terms. Now, don't forget, let's stop for a second. Employment's right, the Employment Rights Bill, I'm going to keep talking about it. Biggest red tape I've seen for probably since about 2003, I think. That's the biggest amount of red tape that I've seen. And we know that it's going to affect everybody. And that means if there's something in your contract now you need to change or your handbook, get it done now and we can do it for you. So what does flexible working mean though? This is for the employee. And this is when somebody asks you for an arrangement that allows them to change when, where and how often they work. So it might be somebody that is that's getting to the age where they might want to cut back hours, might want to reduce them a little bit, spend more time at home. Could be a grandparent that now wants to childmind their grandchild on a Monday or Tuesday and they want to change those hours. Could got a new dog, a new pet, could be caring for the elderly, just want to change their hours. Could be traffic issues, could be children issues, could be location issues where they've moved to. It could be transport, the train's a little bit later, so they want to change their hours. There's all sorts of reasons why what initially was agreed might not work for that person anymore. And we want to keep that talent, don't we? So it could be something like that. So it could be an arrangement to change the time. It could be changing the location of work as well. And that could include things like home working or moving to a different shop, for example, or a different location. It could be the start and end times of the day, a total number of hours, But one thing we've got to remember here, it can also be a temporary arrangement. So it could be somebody saying, look, there's something going on in my life at the moment. It's not going to last for ages, but could you just change it temporarily? And let's face facts. In the world now, the average 9 to 5 work pattern isn't suitable for everyone. It isn't. And I think that more and more people are looking at ways of working where it, suits them and it suits their lifestyle. So the average 9 to 5, and a lot of countries now, lots of employers in the UK now, businesses in the UK might trade with, for example, Australia, and different parts of the world where they need to be awake and trade at that time and communicate. So it doesn't suit everybody, does it, the 9 to 5 setup? Many businesses provide flexible working arrangements already where employees have a better say on their weekly hours. And since I think it's been brushed under the carpet, this COVID-19 pandemic, which affected everybody. And I think since the pandemic, there's been lots and lots of people that have said, whoa, I loved home working. I did. I loved hybrid working. I really want to have that and retain that lovely lifestyle. But we have to be completely honest here, and I am known for being honest. There are people out there that will work incredibly hard and not jeopardize home working. And then there are people out there that take the absolute and will exploit their employers as much as they can. Now, we get, and also the other thing I'm going to say, and this is from personal experience of working with people, not everybody, I'm not painting everybody with the same brush, I'm just giving you an example that maybe people on the front line are people that are working for government that are there face to face, don't exploit it. But there are some areas where I know that they do. And I know that for a fact where they can't see the employer, so, and this can happen if you aren't readily engaged with your staff, they won't feel like part of the business. So there's no connection there. We have to have this engagement. So when you give somebody home working, they still feel like part of the business. They don't want to let you down. They see that pot of money as the profit and they want the business to grow. So they'll always have that job. And I think I've given you that example of Bupa and Domestic General. That guy at Domestic General that I spoke to, what a lovely fella. And he said, before the pandemic, he worked in the office. He'd go in the office, he'd spend a fortune on clothes. He said, by the way, he still looks smart, but he'd spend a fortune on clothes. He'd go in the office, he said, and what the pandemic did for him and working from home, which he still has, is that it enabled him to pay off his debt. So he was in debt and he paid off his debts. He gave his car away, he didn't give it away to somebody on the street, but he sold it. He doesn't pay tax and insurance on the car because he said, I don't need it now. I can get public transport if I'm going somewhere. He makes his own coffee. He was giving me his lifestyle change of lovely lunches, homemade food, coffee, saving up. He'd been able to save. He said he's got a lovely setup at home. And he said, I will never, ever jeopardize this job now. It's perfect for me. And he said, the biggest gift of all was I used to spend up to 2 hours each way on the M25 getting to work, and I don't have to do that anymore. What a gift that is, so it does work brilliantly for some people. And then you hear other brilliant stories of people working from home. And then you hear the hybrid stories where if you go to London now, I go to London quite a bit, and actually in London on a Thursday is the new Friday. All the pubs are rammed. Friday it's quiet. Monday it's quiet. So hybrid working, and it does help with things like the climate as well, and it helps with a hell of a lot. You only have to see when the school holidays are on and how easy it is to get to work and get somewhere. But that is the change that it's had. It's made a huge difference. Now, the only thing I would point out about the home working side of it and the hybrid working, the home working, is that you will get people, I'm going to give you some stories that have other work, that make cakes, to sell. So they run a little sideline side hustle while they're supposed to be working. Remember the one I told you made hedgehog houses? If you've got time to do that in your working day. So the thing is, it's got to be managed. There are people out there that are incredible, and there are people out there that will push the boundaries. So you've got to manage, you've got to engage, you've got to remind people about standard of dress as well. If they are dealing with clients, there was I think I told you there was an interview held and the man was topless. Hello, you know, and you know, the fact is there's actually clothes, not just a standard of dress. There's actually wearing clothes as well. But you know, making sure that people are aware if they're dealing with clients, there's still that element of professionalism. Just because you're in home, there's those boundary crossovers as well we've got to establish. So it's not as clear cut as we think, but flexible working does mean flexible. So it includes job sharing, remote working, hybrid working, compressed hours, home working. It includes all of that. And what we need to do is, if you're heavily invested into this, you know, hybrid and remote working, you need to make sure people hit their targets if they have them, and that you support them and you get the right things in place. Flexible working is a way of work that suits an employee's needs, preferences and lifestyles, and having that flexible start or finish time. And I've told you time and time again about the grown adults now, but the two daughters that I have who were incredibly hard to get to school, you know, incredibly hard, absolutely did not like a classroom environment at all from a very young age, and it was a struggle getting them to school. It really was, and it would hold me up. But luckily the job I have and speaking, it wasn't so bad. But it could be just somebody saying, look, it's September's coming up, and somebody could have a child starting work, a child starting work as a chimney sweeper, a child starting you know, school, and that child is struggling. And you know, if you've got to be in work for like 9 o'clock or 9:15, you're really stressed about it, and it doesn't help the situation. So just having that temporary arrangement to say, look, if you need it, start at 9:30 instead. But that flexible start and finish time really does take that pressure cooker moment off, and it can make a huge difference to people. And you know, getting stuck in traffic, temporary roadworks, and it can help maintain a healthy work-life balance. You know, there are several practices that can use flexible working. It's not just letting employees come and go as they please. That, you know, when we talk about flexible working, we're talking about lots of different methods of working, but it's finding the right one. And I understand, you know, I'm speaking to you now, I've got Liz, you always come up with the funny stories. Liz, like they're better than mine. You should be doing these webinars. So Liz has said, Liz is saying on here, there was a worse case than that recently with a chap who stood up in a Zoom call to sort some leads on his PC out. He's only dressed his top half. Oh my gosh. Right, okay, right. So there we go. Let's have a look. I think, Sue, what's got to happen? So Sue's asking about yeah, you can have a temporary flexible working arrangement. You can actually have a temporary one. So I'll get somebody to give you a really good call about that. Hang on. So you can have a temporary one. Right, okay. So there we go. Pros and cons. Okay. Pros are added value. I've got so many bad stories as well of home working, but pros and cons: added value for potential recruits, reduced employee fatigue. What we've got, I'm going to let you look at that while I just speak to you for a second. That pandemic that everybody's brushed under the carpet, that people aren't talking about as much as they should be, that affected so many people. We have a big clump of teenagers that lost their teenage years, that lost their education, that lost their exams, that never had that experience that we did. I know in the 80s, I was living my best life and, you know, going out and having fun and, you know, making mistakes and things like they should be doing, but they weren't. And they also lost that ability, some of them, to socialize, to also, and I'm finding that a lot of people now are like quite serious. So I think that they've lost that, and that's your future employees that you're going to be taking on. And those future employees would like to work from home. They would like to have that lighter life that fits in. They're looking for that holistic approach. So I want you to take that on board when I talk about the future of HR. Lots of companies out there will find more and more people as soon as they advertise the job asking for that that hybrid or home life balance, even at a very young age, before children, etc. And anyway, the way things are going, a lot of people are finding it hard anyway with dating and having children and meeting the right person, if they want that, by the way. But that also has an impact. So we've got all of this to worry about for the future in HR as well. So I promise you now, in the future, more and more people will be asking about hybrid working, about home life, about what you do holistically, and this is part of it as well. So we've got, but what it does do, it does reduce absenteeism. So it puts money in your back pocket as a business, because people are less likely to take more time off. But like I keep saying, that we've got to look at, managing it. It improves retention, typically inexpensive to implement. It increases morale, work-life balance, reduced employee fatigue as well. So you haven't got that, that travel to and from work either. And it's an added value for potential recruits. What you've also got is, if you are advertising for home working, for example, or hybrid working, you haven't just got your local area, you've got the whole of the UK, because people can work from anywhere. Now, the cons of this are that people don't establish the rules immediately. So they don't put rules in place. They don't put in their arrangements. They don't put in what their expectations are. They don't do a risk assessment. They don't look at health and safety. They don't put safeguards in place for the employer, like saying things like, don't sit on the couch with your laptop because you'll have a bad back. And the person then signs to say, I understand that. I have a desk, I have a chair, and blah, blah, blah. And they a lot of people don't think about that side of it. They don't think about the fact that people could go on holiday when they should be working, put on a little fake background, and then say that they're at home working until they get hacked. You have people that work and go and live abroad and then still retain their home working job, but you don't know actually that they're living abroad. There's all these things that you need to establish in your contractual terms. So output and productivity levels will vary from worker to worker. I'm quite motivated when I work from home. However, I do get mithered from my family members if they know that I'm home working. So I completely lie, I have to tell you, and say that I'm working away, because they just go, can you have this? Can you do this? Can you drop me here? Because people think if you're at home that you're actually really flexible to do whatever they want you to do, and you can fit your working around that, but you're actually getting paid for the full day. So output and productivity levels will vary from worker to worker. Hinders office communication. And I'm very straight, I'm quite blunt, and just what it is, it's not that I'm rude, it's just that, on an email, I just think, people put, even somebody see all the time, go, hope you're okay, just wanted to ask. Look, everybody hopes you're okay. I hope you're okay. I don't wish you and not to be okay. So I just straight away go, hi Amanda, do you have that for me? Thank you so much. That's it. But you see, if you don't know somebody, they won't know your personality, and then they might take that the wrong way. So it does hinder that office communication, that camaraderie, that buddying up. And you do miss that, you working together as a team and having a laugh and a joke and different personalities working together. And I think that's brilliant. I love that part of working in an office. It creates distance between employees. People miss out, blurs the line between work and personal life. I wouldn't want anybody to be sat at home and picking up a laptop when they should be with a family watching a film or doing something nice, and picking it up in the evening because they want to get something finished. So you have an arrangement in place and a right to disconnect policy that says you don't have to do that, even though the law is not in for that yet, except for in other areas, but not in the UK. But you would say you can, it's part of the Employment Rights Bill, but I would want you to have a right to disconnect, just to cover you, that says we don't expect you to pick your laptop up outside of working hours, the same as text, and have that header and footer on emails as well. But it does blur the line between work and personal life, and it does reduce, team cohesion as well, and getting together. Look, you only have to think about how, those companies that used to do team building exercises. It's hard to do a team building exercise when somebody's not in the team, isn't it, when they're actually sat at home. So people would go and build rafts together to see how they work, wouldn't they? And go on assault courses and everything to build up teams, because we know that working as a team actually works incredibly well. So how would you do that? So these are some of the key benefits to flexible working in your business. The first and most obvious benefit is that it does help retain that talent, and recruit new talent. Flexible working does reduce that fatigue, that stress, and allows employees to work to their strengths. Now, all of this contributes to a boost in that productivity, a better work-life balance, and happier employees. And that is exactly what we want. Happier staff. You know, everybody wants a happier life, don't they? That's what everybody's hoping to achieve. Now, there's also that financial incentive as well. So the travel of it. I think I told you my youngest son, he is a developer. That's what he does. He develops computers and programming. And he was working in an office and he was traveling on the train, cost him a fortune. He's now moved his job, so he's working from home, and he saved a fortune in travel. And but what he does say, and this is for somebody who really was going, I want to work from home. Everybody works from home now. For him, I'd say that he is really conscientious working from home. However, he does miss those odd days of going in the office. So it just shows you, doesn't it, that hybrid, I think, model works the best. So there is financial incentive. Whichever arrangement you choose, it significantly reduces employee retention, absenteeism, tardiness, and sick leave. Greater retention also means less money spent trying to recruit new talent. But on top of this, flexible working arrangements are generally inexpensive, quick to implement. The disadvantages come from the type of employee. That's where the disadvantages come from. If they're likely to take advantage of company time, they'll do so even more with a flexible working arrangement. Flexible working also could hinder office relationships and communication too. Meaningful workplace relationships can be crucial to a business running well, and flexible working could create distance and miscommunication between employees. There's also the risk of burnout. If people are cramming their hours into 4 days, that's for condensed hours, for example, and not taking sufficient breaks. And it can negatively impact not only them, but others around them. And staff scheduling and overall operations. Not everybody can do this. Not everybody can allow people to have that luxury of working from home. But those condensed hours, remember, they're brilliant. I really like that method of working. And when I used to do it years ago and implemented it in casinos in the 80s, what was fantastic is, and I think I told you why they implemented that, because there was a shortfall in croupiers. Now, I don't know if you know this, but it takes 6 weeks. So if you think about this for lots of businesses, for this particular environment as a croupier, it takes 6 weeks, the transition from an ordinary person with not any skills at all of being a croupier to become a full-blown trained croupier that can do divisions 17 times table, 52 times table. They can divide that, calculate it, chip up, you know, calculate bets on a busy table, and they're under a great pressure, and they only have from, I think it might be 7 or 8 in the morning until the casino opens in a lot of casinos at lunchtime, okay, 2 o'clock, I think. And they have that time to train their staff. And then 6 weeks later, they're trained. So it takes a long time. And this particular casino, they were struggling for trained croupiers to run the casino, so they'd lose money. So what they did is compress the hours over 4 days, but it also allowed people to either spend more time at home on those 3 days, or they could earn extra money doing double time. And they loved that. They loved the extra money. So it was brilliant for them. For you, you could adopt that in your workplace if you wanted, and you could make sure that you could do that for you. And you know, people miss that rush hour traffic. So they come in, you know, 12 hours, and they might come in early, and then they might finish late. It's, you know, how you work it really. But I particularly like that compressed hours, but just keep an eye on the working hours. So the law surrounding flexible working, there are 2 types of requests that employees can make. So we've got statutory requests. They make it under the law on flexible working. Non-statutory request that's made not under the law on flexible working. All employees can apply for flexible working now from the first day of their job. Employees can now make 2 requests in any 12-month period, and employers must pass a decision regarding requests within 2 months of receiving them. So we can take you through this step by step. And employers must provide explanations behind their reasons for rejecting a flexible working request. So that was from the 6th of April 2024 that the government passed that new flexible working legislation and statutory codes. So there's been I'll give you a list of what they were. We had the Employment Relations Flexible Working Act 2023. We had the Flexible Working Amendment Regulations 2023. ACAS's Code of Conduct on requests for flexible working. All employees can apply for flexible working from the first day of the job. This is known as making a statutory application. And previously, this was only applicable to those with caring responsibilities, like employees who were parents. Now, the government then decided to extend this right, this legal right to request flexible working for all employees, which I think is quite fair, really. I think, you know, we can have a conversation about how I feel about that another day, but you know, I think it's fair for everybody. An employee can only make 2 statutory requests in 12 months. If it is a non-statutory request, they can make as many requests as they wish unless their contract states otherwise. So again, this is down to the word. You don't want lots of requests. So I would put something in the handbook about that. Employers must pass a decision regarding requests within 2 months, and they're very strict on that time scale. ACAS have brought that code of practice in. You have to adhere to that. If you decide to reject their request for flexible working, you must do so in a reasonable manner and consult the employee directly. Previously, as you remember, employees would have had to explain how their flexible working arrangements impacted the business. However, and how this could be how this would be remedied. But for me, I think, as I say to you, take a leaf out of my book. You know, it all starts with a conversation. We're not going to get anywhere unless we have that chat. And if you're employing, for example, foreign workers, then they might not know the laws over here. So it might be that conversation, and you could have lost them otherwise. So if you brought an engineer in, you brought somebody in, and you're working with those people that don't know, then actually explaining, you don't have to leave to get the job you want. We can adapt it a little bit for you. That's absolutely fine. You just go through this process. So making sure that people are aware of that, but it is about a conversation, and that, you know, but they don't have to explain to you, not anymore anyway. But I think most people, I would, like if you ask me, if I put the request in and you ask me about it, I would say, well, I've thought about that actually. You can have this conversation, can't you? But they don't have to explain. But employers must provide explanations behind their reasons for rejecting a flexible request. I think that you would anyway, wouldn't you? You would, whoops, I've just taken the slides off, hang on a minute. But you would anyway, wouldn't you? You'd explain. Any normal person. So recap of the most impactful changes. So what we have is we have the change 1, which is the removal of the service qualification, and then we have which is, you know, it's become a day 1 right, may result in increased job applicants who aren't actually put off by the working hours, because they know they can put a request in. Means requests can come before an employee is actually settled into their role. What I would say is, which may create more work, but change number 2 is requirement to consult with the employee. You must consult with the employee before refusing the request. I don't know many employers that didn't. Must consider and discuss alternatives, and can still refuse after consultation. In change 3, it's just 2 requests per 12 months. That's quite straightforward. It was 1, it's now 2. Change 4 is responded to requests within 2 months. The full process is to be dealt with within those 2 months, and that includes the appeal, cuts time permitted by 1/3. And then the change 5 is that requirement. So employees don't have to explain the effect the change will have, nor suggest how to deal with it, but it makes it easier to make requests from the start of employment, and you can still ask the employee to provide, but cannot refuse a request for not doing so. But it's still worth discussing, as employee has the best insight anyway, don't they, into their own role. You might not, you know, you might not know everything that they do. So it's well worth having that conversation. So what has been the impact since the law has changed? Look, so we've got some figures here that I wanted to just give you to you, so you can have a look at how it has changed. And what we have, so to start with, the removal of the service qualification requirement has resulted in an increase in flexible working requests. So the CIPD found that 18% of surveyed employers have experienced an increase in flexible working requests since the introduction of day 1 rights. And we also have 1.1 million employees have left a job in the last year due to lack of flexible working, my son being one of them over a year ago. Hybrid working practices remain commonplace, with around 75% of businesses having some kind of provision in place. And also organisations are more likely to grant flexible working requests following the Employment Relations Flexible Working Act 2023. So that's how it's changed. That's the impact of the law. If you haven't already, okay, so you should have updated your policies and processes on responding to flexible working requests. You should revise your recruitment processes to reflect flexible working opportunities, providing training and support for line managers in managing flexible workers, raise awareness of different forms of flexible working, and develop clear and transparent policies and principles about eligibility for and access to hybrid working. Now, I keep talking about the impact of the Employment Rights Bill, which is going to affect every single person in the UK and every single employer. And I want to just highlight to you that people can have tribunals, even if they've done everything that they think they possibly can. They can still have a tribunal. And I keep reminding everybody I speak to now that owners of businesses, trustees, proprietors, they have vicarious liability for the actions of their staff. And if they're not investing money and time into training their managers or allowing them to go on webinars like this, then they might find themselves, in a sticky situation in the future. You really are going to depend on your managers going forward with all the things that are coming in, from managing sickness to doing return to work interviews to doing exit interviews. You really are going to be really depending on your managers. So when we talk about flexible working, they've got to understand lots of the law, because they make the decisions. They're the first port of call. And sometimes a manager, if you haven't got an HR department, then it's down to the manager to manage the situation. But if the HR department are on holiday, then who they normally turn to, they might make a decision themselves. So make sure you provide training to managers on how to manage flexible and hybrid teams effectively and fairly. And we do have some training that's available with notes that you can host yourself. Put more thought into the possible effects of the request and how to manage them. Make more effort in trying to find a compromise. I think lots of people do, but there are people out there that don't. Review policies offering enhanced terms over the statutory provisions, as they may no longer offer more, and be wary of asking related questions in the recruitment process, because you might end up with a discrimination case. So when you handle that flexible working request, ensure the received request is in written form and contains the date of the request. It would explain this in the policy anyway. A declaration stating that this is a statutory request for flexible working, details on how and when they want to work flexible hours, a statement saying whether previous applications have been made, including the dates, and then that's your first steps that you should do as an employer in addressing the flexible working requests raised to you. And make sure, check first that the request includes the basic details that you will need to consider their request. And in some cases, an employee may decide to withdraw the application for personal reasons. Here they should inform you about their decision in writing. Now, employers must then decide whether to treat their original request as a withdrawal request or not. So that's up to you which one you're going to decide. But invite the employee requesting flexible working to a consultation meeting. So have that discussion. Employer must only pass their final decision through a reasonable manner. Okay, so as I keep mentioning, ACAS have lots of codes with lots of the processes now, which tribunals always refer to. So employers must pass their final decision through a reasonable manner. The employers must make their decision within 2 months of receiving the flexible working request. Very strict on that. It can take longer if the employee in question agrees to this. So if you're struggling, you're trying to come to a decision, if the employee agrees, then that's great. So what you must be doing is assessing the advantages and disadvantages of the application, discussing possible alternatives to the request, offering an appeal process, express your decision in writing through an outcome letter, and the letter should include a statement of the agreed working changes a date for when flexible working will initiate. So that's if you accept the employee's request for flexible working, express your decision in writing through an outcome letter, and the letter should include a statement of the agreed working changes, a date for when the flexible working will initiate. The letter should also outline any new terms and conditions related to their job, and they should be added to their employment contract. Ideally, this should be done as soon as possible or within 1 month of approving their request. And don't forget to change things like holidays, etc. If it's affected anything else, have a look at that. So refusing the request, because there will be times like where you'll get requests and you think, no, that's not going to work for me. So requests can only be refused for one or more of these reasons that you see. So have a little look at that. I'm just going to have a little drink of my drink. I don't have to tell you what I'm drinking, but I said a drink of Coke. Just a second. So have a look at that. The extra cost that could harm the business. The work cannot be reorganized between other staff. People cannot be recruited to do the work. Flexible working will affect quality. Flexible working will affect performance. The business will not be able to meet customer demand. There's a lack of work to do during the proposed working hours, and the business is planning changes to the workforce. So as with every explanation, you can't just go, yeah, let's say we've got extra costs coming in. You can't just say it. You can't make things up as you go along. You have to have evidence. You have to have it there in case you're ever challenged. So where previously it would not have been, employees now have a day one right, okay? So some ambiguity around not reasonably feasible and what it might mean, what an employer might consider as feasible, you may not. So here are some of the reasons anyway. Okay, and if you're refusing, by the way, the decision should be given through an outcome letter clearly stating your legitimate reasons for declining. Okay, so the risks of refusing. Employees still have the right to appeal a refusal outcome for their flexible working request. An employee may be able to raise an employment tribunal claim if they believe their employer didn't handle the request in a reasonable manner or within those 2 months, wrongly treated their request as being withdrawn, and dismissed or discriminated against them due to raising a request, and refused the request based on incorrect facts. So as of 2025, though, employees still have that right of appeal to appeal a refusal outcome for their flexible working request. However, there are talks in government, but it's important to note that employees at this moment cannot complain to an employment tribunal just because their flexible working request was denied, but the government is proposing to change this statutory right. So they are looking at changing that. So this is just refusing. Let's have a look at a case study. I don't know if I've mentioned this one to you before, actually. But this is a case study for you, tribunal, to give you an example. Let somebody else make the mistakes, not you. So this case falls under the old, so this is just for you really to know that the case I'm about to talk about is based on the old flexible work regime. And the reason for that is because we don't have any published cases, and they haven't arisen since the new regime. So what we're going to have a look at here is Ms. Hedger and the British Deaf Association. So what happened here was Ms. Hedger returned from maternity leave, and she then requested, so the claimant requested a flexible working request to reduce her working hours to 16 hours over 2 days. She also suggested a job share between herself and the employee who'd been hired as her maternity cover. So she came up with solutions. Her request was rejected and resulting in the claimant submitting a new request to work 24 hours over 3 days. This request was also rejected on the basis that the role required a minimum of 28 hours a week. But when they said that, they didn't provide any evidence to support that. They just said it needs 28 hours. No further alternatives were explored or considered. So what happened was the employment tribunal, what we've got here is they want to reduce their working hours after maternity leave. They've suggested a job share between the claimant and a maternity cover. Initial request was refused, so second request was submitted. Second request again was refused, but no evidence was given to support the refusal and the decision, and no further options were explored. So what the claimant did is she brought a claim for sexual discrimination, constructive unfair dismissal, and a breach of the requirements for handling flexible working requests. So the Employment Tribunal said that the British Deaf Association's decision to demand at least 28 hours a week created a disadvantage for women who are more likely to have childcare issues than men. Now, the British Deaf Association did not satisfy the Employment Tribunal that their outright refusal to consider anything other than 28 hours was proportionate, and the Employment Tribunal upheld her claims for constructive unfair dismissal, indirect sexual discrimination, and breach of the requirements for handling flexible working requests, and she actually received 36,000 for that. So, you know, again, ring the advice line, but different flexible working patterns, hybrid working, we spoke about that. It's completing duties inside and outside of the normal place. So it could be 2 days at home, 3 days in the office. Remote working, where they complete their work duties outside of the normal workplace. And don't forget what we have here, people like truck drivers, people on the road, salespeople. So we have to have a risk assessment with this. So risk assessment for hybrid, remote, home working, mobile working, alone working, all of this requires risk assessments. Flexi time, so they choose when they start or end their work hours within reason. I don't know if any of you do that, and I don't know if you find that hard. And in fact, actually, let's have a conversation here in the chat box. Let me know if you work from home and what you find hard to manage. I'll read it out. Okay, so I'm warning you that I will read it out. Let me know what would be your ideal job. No, I don't mean like your ideal job, but you know, ideal work setup, which works best for your company. And what are the, you know, the pros and cons, the best bits and the bad bits of it that you've seen. And are people, you know, exploiting it, or are people working incredibly hard? So the employee is allowed to choose, and then we establish core working hours and flexible working hours. So job sharing, where 2 or more people share one job, and I think that's brilliant because you've got 2 staff that cover for each other. So and they cover for holidays. They might share day and night responsibilities for a hotel manager, or even I've seen, as I've told you in the past, things like, you know, personal assistants. One comes in the evening and one works during the day. So the one in the evening picks up the letter typing up, the letter writing, responded to emails, etc. Whereas the one during the day does the busy tasks during the day and answer the calls. So compressed hours, employee completes all their normal work hours over a shorter period, and a full-time employee completes their 40 weekly hours per week within 4 days. So you could do it 3 or 4 days. Part-time working, which again is self-explanatory. And then, you know, consideration, set out home working policy rules, discuss what tasks are expected from staff, outline their work breaks and hours, so their work hours and breaks, explain who they should contact for any work-related issues, including IT, discuss well-being responsibilities and management. And that's one thing you really need to keep an eye on as well, is that people might think it's great to work at home, but if you really some people will thrive, you know, working on their own, and other people won't thrive working on their own. They'll actually, it will affect them. So make sure that you discuss well-being, employee assistance programs, etc. It's not enough just applying your usual work rules and training. You need to create rules that specifically apply to home working, and you know, making sure that that's implemented. So let's have a look at. Okay, right, let's have a look. Let me just have a look. I'm going to read some of the questions here. Oh, right, so Lauren actually asked me a question, but Lauren's gone about retail environment. We can't do it in some people, can we? So Hayden's asked me what's a non-statutory request. It's outside of those 2 statutory requests. Right, I'm having a look now. Right, okay, right, so So I'm going to read out Paul's, okay? I've got so many. As I'm looking at one, another one jumps up. So Paul said, I don't work from home very often, but we have people who do. It works well for them as it helps with childcare arrangements, especially during school holidays. But it does cause some resentment from people whose role does not fit with the home working arrangement. Sometimes people question how we can be sure people working from home are actually working from their full hours. Pros and cons. You can't really, unless you have logging off, and you can manage their use. And I suppose when it's answering calls like Boopadoo and Domestic in General, they know because the calls are come through. And Liz says, we have hybrid working from home. And Liz says I can log on at 7:30 to see who's sick, etc. Worst bits, lack of communication. Some people don't answer their phones or emails, and I get that a lot actually, and people moaning about that. So you need to make sure that if they have the ability to work from home, they must be answering their phones and emails. The phones can't be switched off. And it's obvious that people might whiz out to the local shop to get a bottle of milk and go back home again. But that does happen, but it's managed. And I think it's about honesty, isn't it? So Amy said, ideally 1 to 2 days working from home. I love seeing people at the office and talking to people. Same, that's what I'm like. I did 100% remote at the same company and it was incredibly isolating. So right, okay. We've got a lot of people asking about, Hayden's asking about temporary arrangements. Sue mentioned it earlier on. I'm going to get the advice line to ring you. Hi, Amy. Right, so Liz said, and I don't know that because Liz, are you asking me about document? I don't see the documents, and sometimes I mention documents on here that I think you should have, that I make up, right? So, and then I'll get the advice line ringing me, or the draft people that draft the letters and saying, what's that letter you mentioned? I was saying, well, I think it's good practice to have that letter in place, get it in place, and then they then go, thanks, Amanda, and design the letter based on what I've said. But Liz has said there was a really good form for flexible working available. It had sections including the employee's suggestions of how their reduced hours could be managed if approved now. So I think because of the new law on that, that may not be available, but it might not be compulsory to use that. So let's have a look. Anyway, let me carry on with the rest of the slides. So discuss setting out home worker policies, like things like I said, I keep mentioning, if that, like I have got Starlink. So I've got 2 Starlinks. So where on my little farm I've got 2 Starlinks, okay, and those Starlinks, I don't know if you know, but I think about 2 weeks ago in the evening they were blocked. They just went, and it wasn't, and I was thinking, great, I was just about to watch a film and it just went, the Starlink went. And I bought the Starlinks because they're reliable, they're satellite Wi-Fi, okay. Is it called Wi-Fi if it's satellite? I don't know, I'm not that techie, but anyway, they're brilliant, okay, touch wood, really reliable. However, in the evening they just went, and there was a total global block, so lots of people's Starlinks weren't working. So I don't know whether somebody had gone over with a spaceship or whatever, I don't know, or they've been hacked. There was no information about it, okay. But I had BT Wi-Fi, and I love BT, and I'd have stayed with BT, but it wasn't very reliable, and I wasn't getting fast Wi-Fi, and it was incredibly bad. Sometimes it wouldn't work. So to work from home, I needed really reliable Wi-Fi. My point here is that also what I'm seeing is there are more power cuts now. It's like the 70s again. We've got things like Wi-Fi going, like mobile phones going. So we need to have rules in place as to what will happen if your Wi-Fi goes. My daughter's Wi-Fi went, and no, sorry, not my daughter's, my sister's Wi-Fi went, and they said it's going to take something like, I don't know, 5 or 6 days to repair. And if you're working from home, that's really going to affect the business. So you need to have backup plans for that, and you need to write them into your rules as well to think about the what ifs. So when people agree to it, that you've got those rules in place, like you'd have to come into the office if the Wi-Fi didn't work, or we would, possibly pay. For me, when my Wi-Fi in the past had broken, I would go and hire a room at, the local village hotel. They do these little hubs, and you pay £75. You can go and use their Wi-Fi, or if you have to work and you don't need to be quiet, you can actually just use the Wi-Fi. But are you happy with that? So you need to establish those rules as well. And what would happen, if this failed? So set out that in a home working policy is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now we've also got you are still responsible for the physical and mental well-being of remote workers, DSE risk assessment, lone worker risk assessment, maintain regular communication. I would check in the morning and evening, I would, and at lunch, provide cyber security data protection training. And I also make sure that, that there is meetings where they have to be on. And I notice when I'm dealing with, because I do work for myself, I've worked with the Corona Group for 25 years, but I do work for myself. And when I'm going to be, when I have a team meeting sometimes, not with Corona, but with other organizations, and they get loads of people on that are working from home, they don't go on camera. And I think, what have you got to hide that you're not going on camera? Because if you're paying me to work today, I should be able to be seen on camera that I'm working and where I'm working from, unless don't want you to see my background, I'm blurring it out. I believe that that should be the case. And also, why can't I see you? Because again, we're disconnected ourselves from individuals if we can't see facially each other. Just my personal preference. And I don't know whether you're actually listening or whatever. So maintain regular communication, provide cybersecurity data protection training as well. Very, very important here. Everything costs a fortune. I feel so sorry for people that do have children, and their children say to them, can I have a mobile phone for Christmas? And they might have not just one child, but they might have 3 children, and all of them want like tech. And lots of children do have tech now. But one of these gadgets is like £1,000, so if I'm an employer and I'm giving my staff a laptop, I'm giving them a mobile phone, a headset, chargers, a cost a fortune, all of that, then I need to have rules in place that say that you shouldn't leave it in the back of the car where people can see it. Your responsibility is that you care for this, and that you make sure that you put it in the car, you lock it in the boot, you don't leave it unattended, you take it with you. Because not only that, it is easy to hack into computers and phones. It's very easy. So what we've got is the fact that if I've got, like, think of me, I could have client information that I don't, by the way, but I could have cases on there. Like years ago when I used to represent in tribunal, you'd have things on your laptop that are, really, they're protective documents. So you'd have to, you'd be in the office to access them. You wouldn't be able to go out on the road and access them. But people, you've read it in the paper, people leave their laptop on the train and it contains information there that is really delicate information. You don't want that to happen, so you put things in place, and also promoting that work-life balance as well. So that's the considerations for the remote or hybrid workers. And let me have a look at the next slide. So conclusion. The conclusion is like we've done an experiment. There have been several flexible working changes implemented since April 2024, potential for large increase. Review your recruitment documentation and policies, and if implementing a flexible working policy for your business, lay out all the details for eligibility, standards of work and expectations for home workers in a dedicated home working policy. That is, and Amy, thank you for the Welsh, by the way. Thank you, I appreciate that. Let's have a look at there are questions I'm going to get. Everybody gets the call anyway after this. Let's have a look. Oh, right. Liz says we've got somebody who constantly blames the technology. You can't keep blaming technology. Right. So Karen's saying as well. Hiya, Karen. Karen's saying there's a revised template for working from home form. So Liz said she thought I said starlings. I said Starling. I don't know if I told you that I had a complaint because they misheard what I said, and I got a complaint in actually because they misheard what I said, and I won't tell you what it was, but I got a complaint. It was ridiculous. But they're not. They didn't even apologise either. That they misheard me. So let's have a look. And Hayden, the right. So anyway, I'll let you go because I'll go on and on and on. But I hope, and also get out there in the sunshine, have a cup of coffee now, or do just 100 steps outside. So Crona client 0808 145 3386, Association of Partnership Members 0844 561 8133. And just to say, have a lovely week this week. Here's our next session, and it's not me next. Oh, is it? Yeah, it is me next week. Right to work checks. This is going to be a brilliant one. Now, I will just chat on this a second, actually. Right to work checks. There's loads. Everywhere you look now, everybody's talking about illegal workers. They're talking about immigration. A lot of people disgruntled, very angry. There's protests. There's all sorts going on. And so I just wanted to just confirm that we're going to be talking about right to work checks here. And I did a little post on LinkedIn, I think it was last year, about managing illegal working. And I was just speaking. The fact is, there's, you know, slavery, modern slavery, illegal working. You should be checking everybody has the right to work in the UK. You need to listen to this webinar because I'm going to talk about the government's plans on how they're going to manage things where people do illegally work. Okay, so we've got 3 huge food delivery companies that should have got their act together a while ago, by the way, because what we've got is people that have got a license, that have got, you know, that are working, say for example, for Deliveroo, that as an example I'm giving you, but then they'll finish their work and hand their bike, the bag, everything, an identity over to an illegal worker, charge for that, and that person then will be doing the deliveries in another side of the day. That is happening. Okay, so if people couldn't work and have the ability to work illegally, then it might cut off people wanting to come if they don't have that illegal working. So we've got the right to work checks. You need to check everybody. So we've got 3 of the big delivery food giants joining forces with, and about time too, with the government to stop that illegal working. So that's really interesting. So that's the start of that. They're also, let me just think what else they're doing. So anyway, that's the start of one of the things they're doing, but we can all do our bit. When somebody says all the time cash only, you have to question why it's always cash only. And it's not just here. Remember when I worked in Canada, quite often you'd have a delivery and you think that is not the person that's on that photograph. Or when you got a taxi and you got a car, you know, in the UK as well, I've had that where I've thought that is not the driver that's on the picture, you know, and you know damn well that somebody's using somebody else's license. So that does happen. They're clamping down on it. We're going to talk about it next week on Right to Work Checks, Wednesday, 20th of August, 2:30. That would be a really interesting one, that will. Any questions? events@crona.co.uk. If you want to refer anybody, take advantage of that £500. I'm sure that they're thinking about making it more than that, but anyway, CEW 0411. I'll let you know if they do. And yeah, Liz, that'll be a great webinar next week, won't it? I think it would be great. So Liz put that complaint in St. Starlings. That's funny. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Hayden. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everybody, Liz, everybody who contributed. And I'm looking if I've missed anybody. If I have, I didn't mean it intentionally. Sophia, regular, Lauren. Sue, definitely a regular. And Sue, let me know how you get on the advice line, please, could you? And my email is amanda.chadwick@crona.co.uk. Okay, see you soon, everybody. Have a lovely week. Thank you very, very much indeed. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from everybody at Crona.